is dismissive of philosophy. Now, having studied a lot of wacky philosophies, I can understand their anger towards it. But just because somebody is a bad philosopher doesn't make philosophy untrue or a delusion. Basically, what in this book Frank Turk is saying is the problem with people who think that there was ultimately no beginning to the universe, or in the nothing there was something, is they're so tired of, or so angry at the concept that God could have created, that they're willing to say that there was an energy source within the nothing. So the nothing that they're talking about has sort of a double standard. In other words, they're trying to put something in nothing and still have the nothing of reality. I know that sounds very confusing, but after he gets done saying this, there was a book that was, or an article that was rebuking, it was in Times, and it was rebuking Krauss's idea that something could come out of nothing. And this particular professor out of Columbia University rebuked Krauss's ideology that something could come out of nothing, and how he said that with the cosmic vacuum, just because we can see particles in the universe popping in and out of, or rearranging them ways in such a way where we can see them, is no more mysterious than rearranging the fingers on my hand to make a fist. So the cosmic vacuum concept, and I got to read more about this article, but it sounds like to me the cosmic vacuum is an energy source that makes it look like, if you look at a really strong telescope, you'll see particles popping in and out, but it is not the kind of nothing that we know of. And Krauss seems to think he proved it. Other scientists believe that he hasn't found anything yet. They rebuked him on this particular concept. So I would say that you're in big trouble if you think that something can come out of nothing. You wouldn't even explain that to a child that way. Oh, yes, honey, yes. You see, nothing has something in it.
From nothing comes nothing.
Yeah, well, what does nothing produce?
Nothing.
Nothing. Nothing always produces nothing. There is nothing in nothing. Nothing is literally, the concept is no thing. If you wanted to break it down that way, and that's a problem with people who believe in evolution. How are you explaining to children the existence of the Big Bang? Why don't we start with you, Marc? How do you explain to a child, this concept of the Big Bang? What started the Big Bang?
The burp, I told you.
What burp?
You don't remember my story? About God?
What, about an angel? I thought you weren't serious about that.
No, I wasn't serious about it, but I was saying God. What I was serious about was God, somewhere along the line, had to start it. If we have nothing.
Well, of course he had to start it, but is that your position?
Yeah.
Is that your position, Felix?
Yeah.
Okay. What about you, Marc? Is your position that God started the Big Bang, or God started creation?
He just had to walk away for a second, so you're stuck with me right now. But I could say he probably does believe that. That's one way.
Okay.
That's a good way of being able to tie in your evolution. And from there, God, there was a point of evolution from there, which how the earth evolved. If you want to call it creationism, you want to call it invasion, or you want to call it evolution. I don't think it really matters. But from that point on is when the earth started getting created or evolved or whatever you want to call it.
Well, I'm going to ask you guys a next important question. Now that we've gotten past to that point, that whether or not we believe that God started things, because, that's ultimately the argument, right? Because if God created the universe, then everything else is possible. He could turn a tree into a block of cheese if he wanted to. He could send himself down in the form of a baby, and he can make himself be born of a Virgin Mary, couldn't he? And die on the cross for man's sin, so that they could be free from their sin and the wrath of God, right?
Okay.
Is it possible if he created the universe, he could send himself down on earth?
Anything is possible.
Well, what do you mean anything's possible?
If he created an earth, then anything else he does is possible also. I mean, there's no.
You know what? I hate. As soon as Marc comes back, Felix, I did find that those two paragraphs I want to read.
All right, he'll be back in a minute. He's just taking Dr. Marc.
Dr. Marc.
Dr. Marc.
Dr. Marc.
Dr. Marc.
And a sensational Felix.
Yeah, he has a problem with diabetes, so he's checking his numbers right now.
Oh, that's fine.
Okay, so
that's fine. We forgive him.
We forgive him. He hasn't been doing this lately, but he's been a bad boy, eating things he shouldn't be, and I think his numbers are acting up. And,
Marc.
Yeah. You're not supposed to eat a lot of things when you have diabetes, but I don't know.
I agree.
He has a little trouble with self-control. So, what are you gonna do?
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of my family have diabetes and heart disease, and you got to be really careful what you're eating out there.
Absolutely. No, but what we're saying is, though, I'm going to agree. I would agree that it has to be. The only argument I have is with the literal meaning of the Bible saying that the earth started at a certain time. That I don't agree with. If that's what you believe literally, because I cannot conceive that. But I do believe that the earth would have started with a big bang, and God would have caused that bang, because as he said, you can't make nothing from nothing. You
really can't.
So
Someone's got to cause it.
That's where I go. That's the direction I would.
But there's also another. Yeah, there's another law out there called the law of causality, and we're going to get into that in just a minute. That all effects have a cause. In other words, if a flower grows, what caused the flower to grow? Well, somebody had to drop a seed into the soil, or there had to have been some process of fertilization, and it caused the flower to go. So in other words, the effect is the flower. The cause is an origin that planted the flower
what came
there.
First, the chicken or the egg?
You do have a chicken and egg thing going on. There has to be this particular concept that all effects have causes. Now, the argument is going to be, well, then what caused God? And that's a silly argument. And when Marc comes back, I'll explain to him. He's here. Marc!
Hey.
Marc, we were just seeing how much you're a bad boy.
Well, let's not talk about that. I know.
Well, I'll keep you in prayer, my friend.
Thank you very much. All prayers are welcome.
Yes, I would definitely pray for you that you're going to feel better. And hey, I got a lot of family members that need to do the same thing. Well, I was just telling Felix, Marc, that I did find those two paragraphs. I was looking for them. It was driving me nuts. And I'm just going to read it, and then we'll talk about it. Okay.
Okay.
Now, we were talking about a guy by the name of Lawrence Krauss. Lawrence Krauss is an atheist, and he says that something can come out of nothing in a natural way, not with God's help, but just naturally. So, in other words, nothing is not really nothing. Nothing is a cosmic vacuum, but that's not exactly what this concept. In fact, the rebuke came from Dr. Albert from Columbia University, and he did not absolutely take this particular concept to light. He's an atheist himself, and he says that Lawrence Krauss doesn't know what he's talking about. But here's the two paragraphs. And by the way, I'm reading a book by the name of Stealing from God: Why Atheists Need God to Make Their Case by Dr. Frank Turek, and it's a very, very good book. If you want to learn a lot about the origins of the universe and a good argument for Christianity, he's very, very good. But he also takes the reason why this is valid is because this is from out of the horse's mouth. And let me explain these two paragraphs. I'll just read them. In an interview, Krauss acknowledges that no matter how one defines nothing, The laws of physics are not nothing. Did you get that?
Yes.
I mean, physics. Okay. Let me read that again. In an interview, Krauss acknowledges that no matter how one defines nothing, the laws of physics are not nothing.
Where did the laws come from?
Sorry to keep you use the word nothing, but there's nothing else to use. And although he's clearly annoyed by doing so, Dr. Krauss eventually gets around to admitting that his nothing is actually something. And here's what he says. He goes, even if you accept this argument that nothing is not nothing, he says, you have to acknowledge that nothing is being used in a philosophical sense. But I don't really give a damn about what nothing means to philosophers. I care about the nothing of reality. And if the nothing of reality is full of stuff, then I'll go with that. Let me read that line again because I think that's interesting. He says, I don't give a damn about what you think nothing means to philosophers. Well, I care about the nothing of reality. And if the nothing of reality is full of stuff, then I'll go with that. This admission raises a question, since Dr. Krauss admits all this, why the bait and switch title, A Universe from Nothing, why there is something rather than nothing? Why smuggle in the law of physics and quantum vacuum and then call it nothing? Why disparage philosophers who are only trying to bring the book's assertions back to reality? But Krauss seems to think that philosophers are not talking about about reality, when in fact that's exactly what philosophy is, the study of ultimate reality. So it sounds like Krauss wants to bake a cake and eat it too. He wants there to be nothing, but he wants there to be something in nothing. And that doesn't make any sense. Now, can I ask you guys a question? Lawrence Krauss is a very smart individual. He's the top in his class. He's a college professor and a very well-known atheist. He's part of the big team that goes out and defeats Christianity with their arguments. Would you take that argument to a child, what Lawrence Krauss just said? Would you take that to a child and say, I know I told you, honey, that nothing is a void. Nothing is no time, no space, no matter, but I got to tell you, I just learned a new thing, that nothing is actually something, and it's full of stuff. Would you say that to a child, you guys?
No.
No.
Why? Why?
Because that's not our definition of nothing.
In a way, it's like you're lying.
No, it's just telling you that it's not nothing, that it's something.
Right, exactly. And it sounds silly, doesn't it? I mean, telling a child that nothing is full of stuff is a real headache. It's a real confusion.
This almost sounds like a George Carlin argument.
Yeah, sure. Well,
really
you got
does.
and George Carlin is an atheist, by the way. He's an interesting fellow.
I know.
Yeah. Well, atheists have to say that there was something in nothing. You know why? Because they want there to be a natural explanation for the beginning of the universe. And this is why I say, if you're an atheist out there listening to this radio show, or you're a naturalist or an evolutionist, you have to know this. In the beginning, there truly was nothing. And I don't care how you think you can define nothing. Nothing will always produce what it is. Nothing. Always and forever. Now, if you want to argue the first and second law of thermodynamics, I would love to, but I am going to prove to you that the universe truly had a beginning. And if the universe had a beginning, then something caused it. We call it the law of causality. And I'm sure you guys heard this before. The law of causality is that every effect has a cause. Aristotle identified this as God as the unmoved mover. In other words, what people will argue is well, if every effect has a cause,